Hello otters, Otter Kano here, how are you today? In my last live stream, somebody asked if they could see my palette collection, and so I thought, why not? So this video is just a tour and a chat about all the palettes that I have at the moment. Now, as with all videos like this, please bear in mind that I am a professional artist and I am also a YouTube artists who make videos about paint, so naturally I'm going to have a lot more paint and palettes than what you need in a normal creative practice. With that in mind, I am going to show you all my palettes that I have at the moment, and I'm going to show you in the chronological order of me getting those palettes. The way I work with my palettes is that I tend to retire them pretty quickly once I decide that I'm not going to use them anymore. So I don't have very old setups. I don't have setups right from the beginning. I also don't have palettes that I've had from right from the beginning when I maybe made some purchasing mistakes and I learned from that. So this is the oldest one I have. It's not the first palette I got, but it is the oldest one I still have. And this is the Jackson's Metal paint box. And with all palettes I show you today, I will leave a link down below of where you can buy these palettes. So I said this is like not the first palette I had, but this was the first palette that I put together myself, and I didn't know what I was doing back then. So what I did was I went to the art shop and just bought colors that kind of appealed to me. I had half pan palettes and I knew this tin would fit 48 colors, so I just picked 48 colors, and it ended up being a mixture of Schmincke paints and Holbein paints. I didn't think about color theories or what color you need for the palette. I just went for the colors that appealed to me. And I think at some point it's really important for artists to just put together a palette of colors that they just really enjoy playing with. The only mistake I made with this palette was that I did this right at the beginning of my watercolor journey, and I would say that 48 colors for a beginner is way too much. And I found that there was a lot of colors that I didn't end up using at all, like this range and over here. So there was a lot of waste, and I found it difficult to find the colors that I needed amongst so many paints. So what I ended up doing was a version 2 of this, which was this. So about half the number of colors, and I moved on from half pans to full pans because I knew by then what colors I definitely used in my art. And this was my palette for ages and ages and ages. The only reason why it was my palette for ages and I didn't change was because I kind of moved away from watercolor. I was intimidated by watercolor at the beginning. There's absolutely no need to be afraid or intimidated by watercolors. It's just I had a misfortune of coming across the wrong teachers that wanted to scare people out of doing watercolors by saying, oh, watercolor is really, really hard and it can go wrong so easily and you can't fix any mistakes and stuff. That's all just rubbish and you don't have to listen to it. But I went through that myself, so that's why this was my palette for ages and I didn't use it. But when I came back to watercolor, this was the palette I first got back into and used it loads, and I absolutely fell in love with watercolor. The only reason why I moved away from this was because I found that I tend to like to use big brushes, and big brushes that were way too big for even the full pans. So now this tin has been sadly retired and it holds handmade paints now. I have some of Dan's paints here, which I will leave a link to his Etsy shop. And I also have Kremer's ready-made paints as well. Now, metal tins are fantastic because, as you just saw, you can move things around easily. So you can switch things if you're not quite sure of what kind of palette you are going for right at the beginning of your journey. And you can, it's very flexible in that you can have both half pans and full pans, or just all half pans or all full pans, and it's brilliant for that. The downsides to metal tin boxes is that they can rust, like you can see here, if you are quite vigorous with your brush and you get water everywhere, which I tend to because I'm a messy painter. If you tend to only use very small brushes and you're a very neat painter, then you're not gonna have to worry about rust. But if you, like me, just run water and brushes everywhere, then rust might become a problem for you. Another downside to metal palettes is that the enamel surface will stain if you use staining paints. Now, if that's the kind of thing that bothers you, that might be an issue for you. The third downside, and probably the biggest thing for me, is the cost. Metal palettes are so much more expensive than plastic palettes. And you can get cheaper versions now by Media, which I will show you later because I did get one, but they have their own problems as well. So just bear in mind that, you know, it is more expensive and it can be prone to rust and staining. So if those things kind of concern you, then I wouldn't recommend metal box. However, if you are a neat painter and you don't mind the staining and you just want flexibility in how you arrange your paints, then metal box is totally ideal for you. The second palette I have, you have seen this on my channel before. It was actually my very first watercolor video I ever made, was filling this palette, and this is the Colleen Holman palette. Colleen Holman is a watercolor teacher, a fantastic teacher, and this is the color range she recommends for her course. This is a Mijello 20 well palette that I will leave a link down below for. This has a fantastic range of colors and I found them to be quite practical. However, now that I've kind of moved away from taking her courses, I am thinking of retiring this palette soon and transferring the paints into other palettes that I do still use. This is a plastic palette, so it is prone to staining. The stainings on plastic palettes can be easily removed by using just a plastic eraser if it's something that bothers you. This palette has nice big wells and it has quite a bit of mixing areas. The one thing to note with Colleen Holman's color range is that she recommends having Aurelian, and I think she recommends Windsor, but that is a fugitive color. So I recommend replacing it with Holbein's Aurelian, which is a light fast Aurelian hue. Besides that, it is a gorgeous set of colors, and if you want to do her course, it's a very practical palette for that. Next up is my studio palette, and I'm sure you've seen this loads in my other videos. This is the one I have on my desk all the time and I use it every day. And this changes all the time. When I come across like a new color that I really like, or I change style and find that maybe some of the colors I'm not using that often, then it will just get swapped out. But it basically hits the 12 colors on the color wheel, plus a few of my favorites that I use all the time in this palette. Now from here onwards, there was a change in the way I use my palettes. What I decided was that I'd like to try lots of palettes or have lots of different palettes, but I didn't want to pay the price of like a metal box or even like a Mijello box. And I also wasn't enjoying the staining in my color mixing areas. So what I moved on to was to have a ceramic plate as my mixing palette and basically not mix anything on the plastic palette itself. It's, as you can see, it can still get messy, but for me, it was really important that the mixing area stayed clear for me to be able to see what color I'm mixing very accurately. So from here onwards, you'll see that I don't really use these mixing areas to mix colors. From here onwards, it is going to be relatively cheap palettes. This palette is from Jackson's, and again, I'll leave the link down below for this palette. And this was £5, which is probably about $7 US, and this just means that I can set up another palette without having to worry too much about cost of the palette itself. As you can see, this palette is very well used, and when I retire a palette, most of those colors will end up here, and that's why you see weird lumps of paint from paints that I've removed from other palettes being in these wells. I really do love this palette. It's so practical, it's nice and small, and yet it can hold up to 28 colors. And I do tend to go around sticking half pans and full pans when I need to the mixing area as well. Now I'm going to show you two sets of palettes that are basically just full range palettes. For this one, it's all the colors that Cinelli has, and I was fortunate enough to buy their full range box set, which is the cheapest full range of watercolor you can buy on the market. And this is just all the colors on the palettes, and these palettes are just £2 or £2.50, which is about $3-4, which is an incredibly affordable way to have lots and lots of different colors. And these palettes in particular are very useful to me as a YouTube artist, because a lot of the time on live streams and stuff, the viewers will ask, hey, can I see this color compared with that color? Or like in my last live stream where I was trying to decide on a background color, people can shout out, hey, try this color, hey, try that color, and I just have it out on the palette already, rather than having to go to the other side of my studio to go and grab a tube every single time. So this is the yellow and oranges. And then these are the reds and purples. And these are all the blues and turquoises. Cinelli colors are very nice. Greens and earthy colors. And these are the more neutral tones. So the Cinelli set comes with 97 colors plus 3 colors: the yellow Sophie, the French ultramarine blue, and the Cinelli red that doubles up because they just wanted to fill the box neatly. The only color this set doesn't come with, certainly in the box set in the UK, is the opera pink, because they have trouble trying to source the materials needed to create a tube version of that color. You can still get the pans of the opera, but not tubes, certainly not in the UK. Cinelli's full set is a gorgeous range of colors, and these palettes make it so affordable and also very practical, because the palettes are quite petite, to have all the colors out on palettes. Next up are the palettes that contain the full range of Holbein colors, and it's 6 palettes as they are 108 colors. And they are my go-to watercolors. If I'm looking for a particular color and I don't know what range I could find it in, then I usually go for the Holbein range first, because I know the range quite well. And this is the yellow and orange palette. This is the red, oranges, reds and pinks. And for them, I've written the pigment codes as well, because I get asked that quite a lot on my channel. But of course, if you don't get asked that question a lot, then you don't need that information. But as you can see, not mixing on the mixing areas of the plastic palette gives me the space to write all the information I need as a YouTube artist in particular. And then purples and blues and pinks. And then turquoise and greens. These are the more earthy tones. I've really grown to like the Holbein's earthy tones, especially around here. The green greys, the shadow greens, the Mars violet. They are really lovely muted tones. And then finally all the neutral tones, and then the gold and silver as well. As you know, I'm a big fan of Holbein because I find them to be very practical, and they are good paints if you can get them quite cheaply, like closer to their original prices in Japan. Or if you want a very easily controllable paint, then this is a brilliant brand for you. Next up is another metal palette, and I've seen the medium watercolor metal boxes quite a lot online and on Amazon. They're pretty much everywhere, so I thought I'd give them a go because they are much cheaper version of metal boxes than, say, the Jackson's one or Schmincke's one. They're about $20 in the UK for one of these. However, I'm not sure if I would buy it again, because one really annoying thing is this. I don't know if it was just a bad combination of the palette with using the Jackson's half pans, but it just, and it doesn't matter how much you move this in, it will still slide around, which is quite annoying. And I also like to leave a little gap between the pans, and I find that really hard to do. So maybe I'm using it wrong, maybe I need to bend this more, I don't know. But other than that slight problem, it's a decent quality palette. I'm not sure if I'd enjoy using it as a palette with like the mixing areas and things. I mean, it's fine. You know, it's not that much different, but if I'm gonna pay the price for a metal box, then I think I would go back to Jackson's and get theirs instead of this. This tray, like any other metal boxes, will lift out. However, the tray is really loose in the box, so I've had to put some blue tacks in there again to just stabilize it, so that when I'm just trying to get some paint out, this whole thing doesn't move around, which was quite annoying after a while. So yeah, I highly recommend just sticking a few pieces of blue tack, or even kneadable razor will do the job, so that it's nice and stable in there. I have started to store paints that I've got from paint swaps. So these are the core colors and the Daniel Smith colors that Sade from Sadie Saves the Day sent me as a paint swap, and I will leave a link down below for her channel as well. Next, I have just a few palettes of Daniel Smith colors. I don't have as many Daniel Smith colors as I do with Holbein, purely because of price issue. Daniel Smith are quite expensive over here, but I have started to gather enough that it makes sense to start creating palettes with them. So this is the Primatech colors, and I have 9 so far. I'm pretty happy with the Primatech ones. There are a few that I'm not enjoying so much, like the green Appetite Genuine is a bit too much for me, but other than that, I have really enjoyed painting, particularly abstracts, with the Primatech range. Really nice colors. And then I have started creating palettes out of like families, so like all the Mayan colors up here, and the Peruline colors that you saw in a video, and the Luna colors here. And then I have a Queen color palette. I just have one more color to get, and then I will have all the quinacridone colors. And I really wanted a quinacridone palette because quinacridones and phthalos are my favorite colors in watercolor. And Daniel Smith has a ridiculous number of quinacridone colors, as you can see, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. There's 14 quinacridone colors. So it's good to have just a palette for those as well. And then I have just random colors. It's not all the other colors of Daniel Smith I own, but it's ones that I seem to use quite a bit here and there. Not enough to put it on my main palette, but I do certainly use it or get asked questions a lot on these colors, so I just have them out on the palette as well. And then finally, I have my monster palette that I just filled in a live stream last week, so I'll leave a link to that down below and also up here in the corner for you if you want to check out what colors I put in and see me swatch these colors. So because I just did a live stream of this palette, I'm not going to go into too much detail, but it is basically a Mijello Studio palette dupe that I got from AliExpress for $16, which was a great deal, and it's well within my kind of what I want to spend on palettes, especially one this size. So I'm pretty happy with this. It has huge wells. It has the biggest wells I've seen on a plastic palette. So I'm really happy with this, and I'm really looking forward to starting to paint with this in my studio. So that's it for my palette collections. I hope you enjoyed seeing all of them. If you have any questions about any of the palettes I have, then please ask away in the comments down below. As I said before, I'll leave links down below for all the palettes I've shown you today, so that if you fancy one of them, you can go and buy it for yourself. They're all really good palettes and perfect for what I need them for as a full-time artist and as a YouTuber artist that makes a lot of videos about watercolor paints. Palettes are an ongoing journey, and it's so much fun to explore lots of different options and try out what works for you. So I hope you have a fantastic time trying new palettes. And don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe and hit the notification bell icon if you haven't yet. And I will see you in the next video. Bye!